Let's get to Mike Gill joining us now in the 1000th episode of Birds 365. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this football, Wednesday edition of the show, number 1000 here on Birds 365. How you doing, Mike?
I did not know this was number 1000. That's a pretty big milestone. It feels pretty interesting that I landed on the 1000 episodes. I feel that some of this is the genesis of John and I's football at 4.
Yeah, locally. Absolutely, it is 100%, Mike. There's no conspiracy there. That is the truth, brother.
I always point back to what Mike and I, for those who don't know, because we have a lot of non-local listeners, Mike and I have been talking football for many years on his radio station down the shore, which has been extremely popular and continues to be without me. So Mike deserves a ton of credit. But what we did prove is that people are willing to talk football 365 days a year, because Mike knows he's been in radio for a long time. You get these program directors and they're like, well, you can't talk about that. Yeah, you can. The people want to listen to it. So.
Well, yeah, I remember, John and I had done some spots when he was at Sports Network, maybe once a week. We did a spot on a Thursday and he reached out and said, what if we did football every day? I said, you really think we have something to talk about every day? He said, yeah, I think we can make that work. And we said, all right, every day at 4:00, we'll talk football. We created Football at 4, which we still do on our show. But John and I did it for multiple years. It was the highest rated. It's still the highest rated segment on the show. But that has been the highest rated segment on our show since we really created that segment. And it's good that you guys are talking football. I can't believe this is 1000 episodes. My God.
A lot of episodes, man, isn't it, Mike?
It is a lot of episodes. 1000. That's a lot. We didn't do quite 1000, John, but 365 for multiple years. Maybe we did do 1000.
Yeah, maybe we got close.
we probably did. If you go back, we probably did. But
we've kind of, we do a Football at 4 segment still now. John does the football season with me virtually every day. So, we still have that synergy, but the fact that this is how big the Eagles are is a testament to the fans out there, that they do crave Eagles talk all season long.
The Eagles are a big part of it. I never saw, the Eagles and Eagles fans are the biggest part of it, because if nobody cared, and look, there's the other sports in Philadelphia. I mean, there's tremendous devotion and tremendous interest when those teams are good. When they're not good, which has unfortunately been, especially this year with the Sixers and Flyers, as you know, Mike, it hadn't been a great season for each. And, the interest wanes. And the interest even wanes for the Phillies. The Phillies have been good in recent seasons, but when they're not good.
When the Phillies, in the Gabe Kapler era, they were competitively right there in the wild card chase. That building was half empty. I mean, let's be honest. They got Bryce Harper and the team wasn't a playoff team, and people still didn't go to those games. It wasn't until they made that run in 2022 when they made the playoffs, because the 2022 season, that building was virtually half empty for most of the season. But when the Phillies made the playoffs and then the World Series, they have now been there and been out in full force, and give them credit for that. But nothing's quite like Eagles. I mean, in 1998, I was interning at WIP Radio at the time. And I said, this is pretty crazy. We have people calling in to dispute who the backup center should be. Think about that. This is the only town I can think of where when Matt Pryor signed last week, there was probably long discussions on where he fits on the line.
We try to talk about every player on this show, every single player.
Yeah. So pretty wild.
And, we got big numbers when guys like Harrison Bryant signed, and, it's crazy, which I yelled at the people because they didn't want to listen to Brandon Graham's retirement, but they want to see how a 1-year, $1.2 million player fits into the equation. That's and a lot of it is the success, don't get me wrong, but of the Eagles. But when they aren't as successful, and you go back to the collapse in 2023, there's still tremendous interest. In a lot of ways, there's more interest. So that's what Jeffrey Lurie's built. It was interesting, Mike. He got asked a question about his legacy. And he said, that's for other people to decide. I've already decided. This is certainly the best owner in modern Philadelphia sports. But now it's come to the position where if they can win a couple more, and Jeffrey's 73, he talked a little bit about Julian and the succession plan, but he's still in good health. He still said he feels like a kid. If he can get a couple more, his legacy of the best owner in Philadelphia goes national, I think. And he's one of the best owners.
As I was listening to him, I was watching him talk from his press conference this morning. I watched the YouTube of him from yesterday, and I had this overwhelming sense of how lucky we are that this guy owns the Eagles. Like, you don't think about that. Like, the team that you cheer for, that you're rooting for, that you cover, the owner of that team makes a big difference. And the fact that you landed this guy as your owner and is giving you 30 competitive seasons, as opposed to you could have one of these owners who just doesn't care, doesn't want to spend the money, doesn't care, doesn't make the right moves. You could be the Jets, with that ownership group there, who's just completely blind, oblivious to what's going on. You could have Mike Brown, who doesn't want to spend money. So how fortunate Eagles fans are that Jeffrey Lurie, ended up being the owner of this team, because sometimes that's taken for granted, or you don't even think about who the ownership group is.
Yeah. I mean, Woody Johnson, you bring up the Jets. He was out there yesterday or the day before, one of the days down there. The NFLPA comes out with these report cards for the branch. He said he just refused to believe it because the Jets got a very low score. He was like, it's your players aren't happy because of the business you run.
Which he said he thought was a sham, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, now, look, there's a lot of employees that dislike their boss, and the Eagles got some low scores, but Jeffrey Lurie tends to address them. The plain stuff, I continue to not understand why they can't fix that, but there's certain things, childcare, they don't think the Eagles do a good job. There were certain things they got bad grades on compared to other teams. And their facilities kind of outdated, but has more to do with the city of Philadelphia. And even that, like, Jeffrey could have fled to the suburbs and gotten one of these beautiful new facilities anytime, basically. But he wants to stay in the city. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves.
How much longer do we think he's going to? Because he's
73.
He's 73, right? How much longer do we think he's going to be as prominent as the owner of this team before he starts to kind of vanish and turns it over to his son?
He did bring up Julian yesterday, but I think
not soon.
I think at least 7 years, I'd say, till he's 80.
Anytime you're that age, hell, when you're my age, we're all day to day, and health can take you out at any point. But if he's healthy, and he's healthy right now, and he said he feels like a kid, it's going to be a while. Julian's going to have to wait a while. And by the way, nothing against Julian. I'm sure he's a very smart person. It ain't going to be as good. It ain't.
Generally isn't.
No.
How many times has the son taken over and made it better? A handful, I guess. Vince McMahon.
Well, you could argue Triple H is doing a pretty good job. I don't know wrestling enough to know that, but Vince McMahon was a pretty good promoter in his day, wasn't he?
Well, I'm saying the father had it and made it was a regional thing, and then he took
it I think
he certainly outgrew what the father did.
Yeah,
that was more like just off the top, but like football wise, I know a lot of these are like legacies.
I always go because I'm a Yankees guy, which I get shit for, but who cares? Like,
I didn't know that.
The Steinbrenner kids ain't their father when it comes to trying to win.
No.
Maybe for making money, so it depends, what you're looking at. But for winning, and that's all fans care about. I doubt it's going to be the same. So people should enjoy it while they can.
Yeah, we're in the era right now.
It depends. You guys anticipate him coming in and upsetting the apple cart and getting a new general manager that he wants and doing all those things?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, then I agree. If he wants to continue
to me, it's natural that when you get a position, you want to bring in your own people.
Yeah, right. Makes sense.
And look, at that point, Howie might want to walk away anyway. You know, he's going to have a very difficult time firing Howie Roseman, but you know, at that point, Howie might say, all right, you do your thing. I've done my thing. And now whether it's Alec Halaby or somebody else, there's always going to be change.
Do they not get along? Do they not have a relationship? Like, how could you come in as the owner, a new owner under this regime and say, you know what, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the most successful general manager.
I didn't say that's the first thing. I just said it's natural to want to bring in your own people that you're close.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, it's natural to bring in your own people if you're somebody from outside the organization who doesn't. He obviously has to have some relationship with Howie. I mean, it's his father's right-hand man for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say he's going to move on. I'm just saying that's the history of this type of thing, is that, you know, I know he's very close with Alec. I don't know his relationship with Howie. I know he's very close to Alec Halaby, or he was at one point.
Because Howie did comment on I think he was on Up and Adams this week, and she asked him about, you know, why he hasn't pursued other teams or something to that effect. And I've always wondered why teams have never reached out to him.
Nobody wanted him when there was an opportunity.
Yeah.
Now,
but in the last 8-year window here, there's been no team that has reached out, talked to him, tried to talk to him. Nothing.
You don't know that. Maybe there has. But Mike, what do you
report it? No reports.
No. Well, he's entrenched now. I mean, everybody knows their relationship. I mean, Jeffrey got the question yesterday about Howie's contract, because that's up as well after next year. And he just said very stable and secure. We never talk about contracts. Mm-hmm. And then he said, how long is he going to be around? Was the follow-up. A long time. You know, I mean, he's not available. When somebody had a chance, anybody could have called. When he demoted him for Chip Kelly, anybody in this league could have called up and hired him. Anybody. The New York Jets specifically could have called him up, and he was a Jets fan growing up. They could have had him. Nobody wanted him at that time.
No, at that time, I understand. I'm talking in the last 8 to 5 year window in where we're at right now, from the 8-year 2017 to now. You know, I know he's under contract, but that doesn't matter in this league. You reach out, you figure out a way to do it, you make a trade, you do something. I don't know. It's just crazy to me that we've never heard any reports that anyone has had any talks or interest, or that he's even had any interest in leaving.
What do you think they'd offer them, though, Mike? Like, how do you?
No idea.
He's already a top dog in Philly.
The only thing
we were talking about this the other day, how in the NFL, other than really Dallas, maybe Kansas City now, but like not historically, there isn't like all the franchises are on almost equal plane. There's like not one glamour job over another one. Like, you go to GM of the Yankees, that's better than being the GM of the Rays. The Red Sox is better than the Indians or the Guardians. Like, there are jobs in baseball and in basketball that are more desirable. Sure, that the Eagles' job is probably more desirable than, I don't know. The Jaguar. Like, there are very few teams in the NFL, though, that are like, okay, a notch below. Most of the teams are on a similar plane. So, is the Eagles' job any better than the Giants' job? Is it any better than the Commander job? Is it any better than the 49er job, the Raider job? Probably not. Like, there's not. All the moves are almost lateral.
It is. I would argue it is. It is.
Is it getting there? Is it now, or was it before?
It is for his situation. Like, if Howie left, and by the way, I think the only way he would leave is if someone would give him a literal stake in a franchise and offered him ownership in the franchise.
Right. That's the only thing I see going up, right? I mean, how could you sweeten the deal? It would be that.
The one thing we talked about this on my show a while back. Like, I think there was some weird report about the Jets possibly reaching out to him. Tannenbaum and him have a relationship. I think Tannenbaum gave him his first job. So I've always argued, like, Gino Auriemma is thought to be the greatest women's basketball coach of all time. And I said, this was 10 years ago. I was like, at some point, just dominating at that level, like, you have to go challenge yourself at another level. Like, go to the WNBA and see if you're the best there. And you know, like, if you're just at UConn kicking everybody's butt, I have a hard time with that. Like, you're not challenging yourself more. Does Roseman yearn for the challenge of saying the Jets are so woeful, I'm the guy that can get them something that they've never got before? That level of challenge is something that a Howie Roseman may say, that's what pushes me. Like, I've won 2 Super Bowls here. I want to go to Cleveland where they've never won.
Yeah, but that's a big risk, Mike. I would say he needs another Super Bowl to do that, because if you go and fail or fall on your face, you risk your legacy. I think you'd want to win at least another one. I don't think it's
about a legacy or anything like that as much, or failing. I don't think he's afraid of failing. I think, you know, successful people generally don't work that way. You know, fear of failure. But
it's the challenge.
Yeah, I would say that he's smart enough to realize he's not going to get the same opportunity somewhere else, the same rope. I talk about it all the time.
Right.
And Howie brings it up and doesn't like it, because when it's brought up, he doesn't bring it up. And he claims he's not on scholarship. Well, Jeffrey just confirmed, yeah, you are. You're not going anywhere. Like everybody else in this league is GMing for their jobs, not Howie.
But Howie has done a good job to create that type of rope.
Well, right? Yeah, he's part of it. He's part of it.
A shitty team this year, he probably plays on scholarship.
But understand, when he got, and people call it a demotion, he wasn't demoted. He was given a better job title and a raise. Now, he was still pissed off because he loved the personnel part of it, and that's what he wanted to do. But how many guys get demoted and get a raise? That's how much Jeffrey wanted to keep him around. And he gave him the better title and all that kind of stuff. And eventually Chip failed. It was the worst decision of Jeffrey Lurie's career, which he admits, by the way.
Yeah, but he took the risk, thinking that Chip Kelly was something different.
Well, his convoluted thinking, if you remember, was, I got to give him this to prove, so he can prove he could fail. It doesn't make sense. You know, it's like, in other words, to prove it to Chip Kelly that you shouldn't be doing this, I'm going to let you do this. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And it was.
I think stashing Howie, though, maybe shows you that Lurie was never fully sold. You know?
Oh, it definitely. There's no debate about that. He gave him a raise to stash him.
Right.
And again, I still think if the Jets would have called then and offered him a GM job, he would have left. He would have took it to be a GM in the National Football League, because he had no idea he was coming back and seizing. You know, he might have thought Chip's going to fail. A lot of, you know, people can say that in hindsight, but, you know, the Eagles were a good team. I think people forget. You know, they made the playoffs with Chip. They won 10 games twice till it all fell apart. There was no guarantee he was going to return, but he did get a raise. So clearly Jeffrey wasn't pushing him out the door, because he was making some pretty significant money and got a raise on top of it. It was just a weird situation and doomed to failure. And it was Jeffrey's biggest mistake in 30 plus years as an owner.
No, it turned out to work out for the best.
And that's, sometimes the old 2 steps backward to take.
You got to hit rock bottom.
Step backward to take 2 steps forward, that type of thing. And it worked out, to say. And by the way, you can make a strong argument that Howie Roseman wouldn't have turned into the Howie Roseman of today without that as well. Because he's talked about it numerous times. He went to talk to GMs from different sports, successful GMs. He talked to R.C. Buford. He talked to Brian Cashman. He talked to the guy who was running Manchester United at the time and tried to delve into their heads of what made them successful executives. And he's been different since Howie 2.0, I call it. has been much better than Howie 1.0. So if none of that happens, he probably doesn't get better as an executive. Butterfly effect type of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Which Doug Peterson wouldn't understand, but I digress. I'll tell them. I asked Doug Peterson about the butterfly effect once. He had no idea what I was talking about, Mike. None. Zero.
Is Doug Peterson's career is he done? What's his?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
But
maybe because of what John just said.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, hey, football guys are football. There's a lot of shit. They're hyper focused on football, to the detriment of other stuff. So he's not the only one who wouldn't get that reference.
Yeah,
I don't think.
But you think he's done as a head coach or just coaching in general?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. He likes coaching. You never know with these guys. Some of them love coach. Look at what Frank Reich's doing, by the way.
Yeah,
going out to Stanford for 1 year
to be an interim coach.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, these guys just like coaching. So I can't say he's done as a offensive coordinator, but Chip's back as an offensive coordinator. So I can't say he's
I don't think anybody looked at Doug's offenses like these great offenses. That was the thing. Like him as an offensive coordinator, he wasn't really the play caller in Kansas City. Then he was here. I don't know that people he wasn't some innovative coordinator. That's all. No,
well, he wasn't considered Sean McVay. No,
yeah.
But either
I think he was looked more of like a guy who was like, the more of a head coach than a coordinator. Sometimes you get these guys who are coordinators better than head coaches, and vice versa. He's probably a better head coach.
Well, he was the play caller though, as opposed to say Nick now.
Yeah,
he was the actual play caller. And I always I'm a big fan of CEO coaches. I always give Nick a lot of credit going back to 2021 and saying, this is a big job. I got more shit to do than just call plays and handing it off to Shane Steichen. I give him a lot of credit for that. Not many people do because they're obsessed with play calling, Yeah. And it's maybe, I talk about it all the time on the show, maybe the most overrated thing in football, play calling. I think, you do all that shit during the week and you got your big menu of plays and you're saying, Tom Brady explained this the best. There's a clip out there. I talk about it all the time. Every football fan should watch it. And he just explains what you're doing when you call plays is you're dealing with probabilities. So you have all these formats. You have third and short, 3rd and 5, you got 3rd and long, and you got this whole menu of plays. And then you say, what's the defense? All right, the defense usually does this on 3rd and long. You're calling probabilities. So we're going to run this. And sometimes as a quarterback, you got to go up to the line of scrimmage and they're in an unscouted look. And that's where the Brady's turned into the Brady's. And you got to get your team into the best possible play to survive, maybe a bad look. But all that shit is gone over during the week. And then you have a slight feel for the actual game. And I thought Shane was really good at it. Yeah. Shane was better at it than Nick or Brian or even Kellen. He's better at it. But I always get a kick out of you can make a strong argument that at least from a well-rounded perspective, Mike, that Brian Johnson's offense was better than last year's offense. But they won, and Kellen Moore's the head coach, and Brian Johnson got fired.
Well, I mean, Kellen Moore, the passing game, I think because of the talent that you possess on at the skill spots for the passing game, it's perplexing as to why that area of the offense hasn't taken off because your run game is so good. You would think that would only help make the pass game better, or are they so insistent on the run that brings the passing numbers down? It's still not this high flying area sold. It still doesn't flow quick bang, 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 1, 2, 3. It's still very clunky at times. They take a lot of shots down the field. It's just not a very fluid passing attack. But their run game, you would say, was better than the year before. Obviously, they had a more talented player as well that helped with that. So, but both passing attacks, you're thinking you got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and we all hold them in such high regard, and yet you're always saying, why is this passing game just pedestrian?
I don't know, though, because Lurie had an interesting comment on that yesterday because somebody asked him, hey, did this season change your perspective on always wanting that high-flying passing offense? And his response was pretty good. Well, if we didn't have a good passing attack, we wouldn't have won the Super Bowl because they shut down Saquon Barkley. So, I think because they answered the bell when they needed to, they're in a different frame of mind versus if they didn't get over the top, Mike, and then you look at the season and say, hey, where did it go wrong? You look at that 29th and you're like, what the hell? We got to get better. But because they answered it, I don't really know if they think it's a big problem inside the organization. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I thought Lurie's a comment on it was interesting.
No, and that's it's definitely a perceptive thing as the team to say we don't have to do this, but we can when we need to. Right. And it's the element of just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't.
Right. And they proved that to be true. It's one thing to say that; it's another for it to be proven true.
Yeah, all throughout a season, we watch games every week, and then what we see, we make these assertions based on what we've seen. And yet, just because you haven't done something yet doesn't mean that you still won't or can't. And they're saying, I guess, hey, we don't have to throw the ball 45 times, but if we need to, we can certainly do it. We saw that. What was that? The Pittsburgh game where they came out and were like, was that what you all wanted to see? We can do it if you really want us to, but we don't have to. So we're not going to show that until we need it in a bigger moment.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's in hindsight, that's the way it worked out. But I think, even the players were, and you saw it again, AJ got most of the criticism for it, but Devontae would say the same thing. Jalen would say the same thing. In fact, Jalen, there's many quotes with Jalen. Jalen's like, sometimes if you don't use it, it's not there. And I think everybody was struggling with that. And then they proved it, basically, as Jeffrey pointed out. Kansas City probably did the best job on Saquon Barkley the entire season. And then all of a sudden the passing attack showed up. But what I go full circle, Mike, the difference between the 2023 offense and the 2024 offense is not Saquon Barkley. That's what made it different. It was the defense.
Well, the defense on this team obviously was much better. That's for
exactly.
Sure.
If you put that number one defense with that 2023 offense, I think Brian Johnson's the head coach.
Yeah, that defense was putrid in 2023. And you can say that, that put the offense in many terrible situations. Yeah. And that offense, you were constantly playing from behind, so you had to throw the ball a lot more. And it was that 2023 season is one that there should be a 30 for 30 on. What happened to the 2023 Eagles?
I think it might be more simple. I think John is right. If you got Vic Fangio the year before. Well, but if they remember how it played out when Vic went to Miami? It was he was going to come to the Eagles. The timing didn't work because Gannon was kind of, nobody knew. I don't remember exactly how it played out. But
I don't even go down that.
If that unfolded,
and by the way, I'm right about that as well. Sorry.
Well, if that unfolded a little differently, John, and Mike, maybe 23 would have been a different story.
Possible. I mean, they didn't have very good linebackers. Their safeties were not great.
But they would have had Vic Fangio. I mean, you could have came into this season and said your linebackers weren't great. That was our biggest concern up until September 5th was that the linebackers stink on this team.
Do we think he was turning Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham into a duo? I'm not sure. Terrell Edmonds and Rashad Evans.
I don't put it above him because Oren Burks, you're telling me you could argue Nick Morrow's had a better career than Oren Burks up until 5 games last season.
Yeah, and I'll guarantee he would have made them better than the version they were that year, right? I mean, I don't know if he would have made them Zach Ball.
Okay, it's possible, but James Bradbury also had a really rough year. Your safety play, you had Blankenship got hurt somewhere in there. Evans was in and out. Edmonds was
in
and out. Fired was here.
How much is it all tied together?
Yeah,
it very well could be. I think the moral of the story is their personnel on defense in 2024 was significantly better than it was in 2023, at least 5 spots on the field. Plus, you had, Jalen Carter was a rookie that year. He had a really good 10-game stretch, and he kind of fell off a little bit. I'm
not saying they would have been the number one defense, but they would have been acceptable. I mean, you could argue
I agree with that. I think they would have been acceptable. I'll give you that one.
They would have been. They were deeper on the defensive front in 2023.
Well, that's all part of the story. Is they had Fangio in the building. They wanted him, and then the Gannon thing happened, and then they lost Fangio. They had to go to somebody outside the organization. The defense, though, was a part of why they were 10-1. Right? I mean, they had some moments in that 10-1.
Yeah, they did. I think
they played the Dolphins on that. Was it a Sunday night or Monday night? The Dolphins had been blasting everybody, and they shut them down completely that night.
Oh, I thought they were very unfair to Sean Desai. Now they're in the building. Clearly, Sean Desai was not ready to be a defensive coordinator. So, I mean, they know better than anybody, but they should have stuck it out for the year. They would have been better. They wouldn't have had the colossal collapse late when they moved to Matt Patricia. If they just would have stayed the course, it still would have been bad. I'm not trying, still have to move on, but I thought that was the biggest mistake. But yeah, like Bradbury's a perfect example. Like, look, he collapsed. Vic ain't playing him in the slot. I mean, he's a better player with Vic Fangio, just from the standpoint of he knows how to play. Vic would have taken advantage. He's the perfect guy to explain. I mean, he may have not been a second-team All-Pro like he was the year prior. That was an outlier, but no way he collapses under Vic Fangio. No way. Zero.
Most likely, I would agree. Yes, 100%.
And think about what that team could have been if they were better defensively.
Yeah, because we look at that team as a colossal failure almost, as opposed to a team that was once 10-1, coming off of making the Super Bowl the year before, and like not letting that Super Bowl loss deter them. 10-1, and by the way, they're 10-1, and I think this gets lost in this. They won games against Buffalo, at Kansas City. Yeah. I mean, they had some wins against quality teams that year. They lost at the end of the season to bad teams and looked bad doing so. Arizona, the Giants, I mean, they were losing to bad teams. They beat good teams. It is the most perplexing season I think I've ever watched in my entire life.
Yeah, and to John's point, a top 8 offense to boot too. And Brian Johnson got pushed out of here like he was 31st in the league. I mean, interesting to look at. Mike, I wanna run this by you, even though I don't want to run this by you. I have to.
Is it a tush push question?
Yeah, what'd you think? They tabled it. Onward to May. Just give me a brief thought, Mike, on it.
All right, so I explained it this way, and I have listeners on my show are like, so you're an Eagles fan and you want them to get rid of the tush push. I said, no, that's not what I said. As somebody who likes the Eagles and watches the Eagles and wants them to win games, and I don't want them to get rid of the play because it works for them. They do it well. For whatever reason, no one other than Buffalo does it. So I am for the play staying. If you ask me as a football fan and someone who covers the game, I think the play is unfair advantage to the offense. So if you take the Eagles out of this and say, hey, here's the football play, take the jerseys off, watch the play, what do you think? I think it's an unfair advantage for the offense to have 3 to 4 players being able to physically push the ball carrier forward when the defense cannot also push back the other way. You are giving an unfair competitive advantage. The thing, and I think John and I have talked about this on my show, maybe even here, that is being done here is these teams are going to the competition committee and they are saying the play is unsafe. That's not a competitive advantage. You need to go to the competition committee and say there's a competitive advantage problem here, not a health risk, because the health risk is not for the competition committee to decipher. The competition committee is supposed to say, well, why is this play a competitive advantage? No one is explaining it the right way. You can't have three players physically give leverage to the ball carrier. It makes it an unfair advantage for the offense. Do I want to see the play out for the Eagles' sake? Of course not. But as a football observer, I think the play gives the offense an unfair advantage.
Yeah, I think there's so much, but I'm with you at the core of it. I that's exactly what I said to Zander. I mean, number one, it's not fair to the defense. That's nothing to do with the Eagles.
So
from my
if these teams, John, would have gone to the competition committee and said, we are proposing to ban the tush push because we feel that it's a competitive advantage to the offense, I think that would have been looked at more seriously.
Well, I think
the injury part of it. And then Jeffrey Lurie zings them yesterday by saying, we run the tush push play because we find it to be a safer alternative to the quarterback sneak.
Well, Jeffrey's very smart. And one thing I noticed right away is that he left open the possibility for him to change his mind. And he was talking about the safety part of it, because where I think most of the misinformation comes, and most of it's the politics of the NFL. Remember who they're trying to convince. They're not trying to convince the competition committee. They're trying to convince the 32 owners. And how do you convince the 32 owners to remove a play you want removed from the game if you're Roger Goodell? It's pretty evident that he wants it removed from the game. The easiest way to do that is to scare them. What do you scare them with? Legal liability, player safety.
Yeah.
They've already been through it. They got to pay billions of dollars. The thing that gets through to the owners quicker than anything is taking money out of their pockets.
True.
That's why they do this.
So they are talking about not banning the play, but banning the ability to push or tug the player.
A lot of people don't realize, and Roger Goodell confirmed this yesterday, and this is what I advocated. Prior to 2005, 2004, it was illegal to push players.
Right.
Yeah, but if the advantage is so unfair, why aren't more people doing it successfully?
Well, there was an interesting point about this that somebody brought up. I can't remember who it was, but many people say because of Jalen Hurts being physically bigger, Josh Allen being physically bigger, that when the running backs and the tight ends jam their shoulders and push them forward, they're able to withstand the blow more than another, like a smaller. I think hit from behind, and he might actually. That's where the injury situation could come in, where the running back comes in at full force, runs and pushes that pile forward, and then he actually hurts his own quarterback.
The mechanics of that play, I think people get bogged down. I'm in favor of removing pushing from the game entirely, so it's easy to see it down the field.
Quick, John, the defense is not allowed to push.
No,
you can't be a linebacker, put two hands on the nose tackle, and then run and jam him forward. You cannot do that. So they can't push back the other way. So people who are saying, why can't the defense? They're not allowed. The defense cannot use leverage to gain an advantage on the play. But you're saying the offense can. That's where the competitive advantage comes in for the offense.
Well, and by the way, to the point of your point about being an Eagles fan and how successful it is, even that last year and I looked up the numbers. First try there's context to this, because when the Eagles are in third and short, for instance, they often they run the tush push with the understanding they'll be doing back-to-back tush pushes. But that said, the team was far less effective on first try tush pushes, 38 of 49 this past season, under 80%, than its last season with a first try traditional quarterback sneak in 2021, the last year they didn't run it, when they were 92.9% successful. And if you want to go back to 2017 with Carson Wentz, they were 100%. They were literally perfect on a traditional quarterback sneak. It's not even. You muted yourself, Mike.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, I had a sneeze. we played a play yesterday, Dallas Goedert, and the audio of Goddard is talking about how he physically pushed the guy forward and like helped that play into the end zone for the touchdown. And it's like at that point, the play looks like it should be basically forward motion, stop dead. And that's where Goddard comes in and just blows the play up by pushing the guy forward. That is where I think you have an unfair advantage. Now, the defense cannot also push back the other way. Like they're not allowed to do that. It's just like when you go to try to block the field goal or an extra point, the linebacker can't use leverage on the player in front of him to try to get extra jump. You can't put your hands on another player. So I don't understand how they let the offense do that. But for whatever reason, I think they're going to take that part out of the game. You know, they're tabling this to get the verbiage.
Yeah, exactly. They're tabling it to rework which was poorly put together. I said that from day one. It was never going to pass. But they want the play. Roger Goodell wants the play removed from the game, not the play he wants pushing, as he said. He wants to go back to the 2004 rule. He wants pushing as a whole removed from the game, and I agree with him. Doesn't mean he's going to get the 24 votes, but the way to get the 24 votes is to scare them over safety issues.
Now,
he's a good politician.
People, the defense tackling the ball carrier and pushing the ball carrier is different than gaining leverage, giving leverage to another defensive player on your team. Just to clarify that for people.
Yeah.
People are saying like you can gang tackle and push the ball carrier back. Yeah, you can. Once he has the ball in his hand, you have to try to tackle him. That's the goal. But you can't push your defensive lineman.
You can't gain leverage. You use the right term.
Leverage
that's
pushing him forward. Yes.
Yeah.
I had this yesterday went down the road of, well, why do the defense and offense should there be different? Like, why is it unfair for the defense? You know, they can't throw the ball. I was like, really, they can't throw the ball. The defense can't throw the ball. Yes, there's inequities on the offense and defense. You can't give the offense, you're giving leverage by saying they can physically push the ball carrier forward, and the defense cannot physically push their defensive players forward to help make that inertia stop. Now, Raheem Morris, basically, he's a defensive minded head coach, and he admitted we can't stop the play. So people are like, well, if you can't stop it, that's your problem. He said we can't stop it. Why? Because the offense has an unfair advantage. They can push the ball carrier forward, and we can't do anything to stop that.
Well, then, yeah, and then that's why I don't want to make it about one play, because then you go, well, nobody else can do it. And, you know, a lot of teams can't do it because they don't.
Which is true.
And Jeffrey brought up, well, yeah, they don't have a quarterback who can, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but but isn't that the point? Then the unfair advantage isn't in the play; it's in the player, and that's what football is all about.
The unfair advantage is in the pushing everywhere.
But if it only gives you an advantage if you have the right player, then
it gives you an advantage. If Devontae Smith is downfield and you're pushing, it gives you a huge advantage as an offensive.
Yeah, but I'm talking about strictly from why other teams are not completing this play at the same.
Well, you're talking about one specific play. I'm trying to take it away from one.
You're saying from the game as a whole. I understand.
Yeah. The interesting part about this is that the other team that runs it to some level of success and at a high volume is Buffalo, and they're against the play.
They're against the play, and I get because a lot of people got on Sean McDermott. What Sean McDermott was doing is echoing what the league wanted.
Right. Well, McDermott is saying, listen, I am representing the competition committee, and therefore I have to take my head coaching hat off here, even though the play works for us. Yes. I think it's a health and safety risk. That's what he's saying.
People really don't get the politics going on here. That's the
But
problem.
I think McDermott's team being able to run the play successfully and him being against it for health and safety reasons is the politics here. He's the guy who benefits from the play. He's like the Eagles. It works. Stop us. You can't stop us. We have Josh Allen, and we have two running backs pushing Josh Allen forward. You're not stopping that play. And yet he's out there saying, well, as a member of the competition committee, we have to get rid of this play.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Lurie left it open, man. He did. And he's a very smart guy. And he said, I think for everybody, including myself, especially health and safety is the most important part when evaluating any play. What does that do? He said, I'm very open to whatever data exists. Right now he's in the mode of it's successful for my team. And even though it wasn't as successful, which he also admitted, and I pointed out the numbers as people think it was, to this date, there's no data that shows it's not a very safe play, which Dr. Alan Sills, who's the NFL's chief medical officer, said, yeah, it's not about now, it's about future. And there's a whole industry, for people that don't know, that has nothing to do with football and insurance, called risk assessment. And they do these data modelings, and the NFL is going to put this shit together.
Yeah.
And it's going to be full of crap. I'm the first raising my hand. But Jeffrey Lurie is going to get on board. That's my prediction. Because he's going to look at his other 31 owners.
Well, it's not going to matter. They're going to change the wording of the play to where you
can
push and pull the players. That's where this is going to get to. So when it goes to vote in May in Minneapolis at the next meetings, it's going to be not a health and safety risk. It's going to be the play. They'll be no longer able to aid and push the ball carrier forward.
Oh, I agree with you, Mike, but they'll still tag it with health and safety.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest way they can get owners to vote, because all they care about is legal indemnity.
But that's where the hypocrisy comes in so big, because if you're going to put it in that microscope, you can take literally any play in football, run it through the same thing, and come up with the same result.
Yes, but here's the difference. Here's one very, very key difference. Anything that's collectively bargained, like 18 games, they're off the hook. This is not collectively bargained.
Okay, that's a big
In fact, the difference here is now it's public that they could have taken it out of the game. They were discussing to take it out of the game. So if something catastrophic happens,
right,
the first thing a lawyer is going to do is say, you could have took this out of the game. You had every opportunity to take this out of the game. And they will lose billions of dollars in their minds. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're right. But anyway, Mike Gill, good stuff.
I'll get you out on this. Here you go. The NFL is going to have a Christmas Day triple header this year.
Yeah.
Do Eagle fans want to play on Christmas? I have a poll on my X platform right now. 63% are going one way. 37% are going the other way.
It's got to be
it ho, 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 yes, or bah, humbug?
I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess it's a bunch of no's.
63% say bah, humbug, no.
Yeah.
No Christmas.
I say no for selfish reasons, because it's a work day and I'm a Christmas guy.
Yeah, I think everybody.
I like to hang with my family.
Well, I think people want to watch football. They don't want to have the, you got to do a lot of shit on Christmas, most people with their families. And you can't.
Okay, then I'll ask you, John. This is the Super Bowl champions. You saw Kansas City's schedule last year. They were on Black Friday. They played every day of the week, it seemed like. Will the NFL put the Eagles on Christmas Day? There's three games on Christmas this year.
I think so. Two of them are going to be on Netflix, one on Amazon.
One's on Amazon Prime, yes.
Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah, ho, 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 get ready. The Eagles are going to play on Christmas. That will be my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, they're a marquee team.
Yeah,
and for all the people that think.
By the way, get ready for this: Super Bowl champions playing. Last year they played a lot of 1:00 regular games because of what happened the year before.
4 or 5, right? I thought they only had 5.
Yeah, they had a lot for them.
For them. Yeah. This year, get ready for Sunday nights, Monday nights, Thursday nights, Black Fridays. That Chiefs schedule last year was brutal. And we talked to Colin Thompson about this, how regimented football players are and how different the week is for them when they have to play a primetime game. And when you have to play multiple primetime games, how many times through the course of the year that takes you kind of out of your rhythm and routines. And people don't realize, like, if you play a Monday night football game and you're in, say, San Francisco, you don't get home until whatever time in the morning, the lack of sleep that you get, and then start your week back over. And that doesn't get factored in a lot of times to these teams that have Super Bowl success or stuff like that. Why, the schedule does matter a little bit to these guys.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up for this reason. And at Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on the X platform, subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. That's at Mike Gill Show. 97.3 ESPN South Jersey down the shore. Does a tremendous job there. I'm glad you brought it up. Of all the misinformation that I've tried to explain on this show about that Tush Push topic, the biggest part of it is that the league doesn't like the Eagles. The league loves the Philadelphia Eagles. Loves the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's where it shows up. That's where it shows up. They love any successful team that generates interest. They love
and doesn't get in any trouble. They haven't had a player in trouble since 2020, something like that. Are they the longest running team without an arrest?
Big Dom. Give a hat tip to Big Dom. That's his job.
Big Dom. Well done. Good stuff, Mike. Appreciate you joining in. Make sure you guys go follow him on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel over there at Mike Gill Show. Mike, appreciate it, brother.
Scrabble, anybody?
I was wondering where you were sitting today. You're in a new room.
Yeah.
Got a little black light poster over here. I'm about to, partake.
Nice. Is this your new office area, or are we going to see more of this? No.
Maybe it's a little quiet. I have somebody's outside cutting a tree down, so it's louder downstairs. So I came upstairs today.
Nice. All right, Mike.
I noticed people noticing my new room today.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Thanks, man.
Thanks, bud.
All right, there's Mike Gill joining us here on Birds 365. Well done by Mike Gill. Good conversation there. I had my question on the Tush Push. I wanted to go quick, and there you go. You get into a rabbit hole, but I thought Mike brought up some good points. John, one thing I want to bring up to you that Cilio brought up yesterday, which I thought was pretty good. And you're a football historian yourself, the Ice Bowl, and he brought up the irony of the Green Bay Packers being the team to introduce this after the Eagles just won a Lombardi trophy, and it was their coach, Vince Lombardi, with Bart Starr, who ran a Tush Push to win the 1967 championship game. I thought that was an interesting reference by Big Sills on the Tush Push combo.
Yeah, I have to look at the play. I know it was a lead from Jerry Kramer. I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
I don't know if it was fully a Tush Push, but I know they were 2 feet away.
I think that was a hell of a block by Jerry Kramer. I don't think that was a Tush Push, but I got to look at the play.